Hello everybody. Uh, in fact, my last video, while talking about this Labelle Dame Sans Mercy, was split into two due to some technical problem, and I couldn't merge both the videos, and the second part was just lost. It was deleted, so I have to do it again. I'm here again in front of you, and it stopped somewhere at the seventh stanza of this poem, Labelle Dame Sans Mercy, and we saw how this knight at arms, who's been addressed to here in this poem, was seduced by an enchantress, kind of fairy, uh, that who is referred to here as Dame, a woman without mercy. Dame sans mercy means woman with, without mercy. So he is lost in her love, and is totally surrendered to that intoxication of love, because she doesn't seem to perhaps be from this earth, or she is a fairy queen sort of a creature. uh, so that was the overwhelming influence of this enchantress, who has seduced him, and sucked the very vigor out of him. She found me roots of relish sweet, so he was fed with mm, some strange roots obtained from the forests, deep forest, and it tasted really sweet, and wild honey, manna dew, wild honey. These are all divine, stuffs for him, because he has never tasted such things before. That is what manna dew means here, something very divine in taste, and also perhaps that boosts the very libido. This could be the things, and sure in language, strange, he said, I love thee. So she said it in a strange language. He couldn't understand, because she was not a human being. Though in her appearance appeared a sublime beauty on earth, but she's a nymph, a sort of creature. So she said he couldn't understand her language, but he could make out that what she said was, I love thee true. She said, I love thee true. So, not an affirmation of love here. It could be just an appreciation of, his obedience, that he obeyed everything she said. He, in fact, did everything she asked for, and couldn't suspect her, love. Maybe out of that, appreciation of for his behavior, she says, I love thee true. I love you truly. And she took me to her elfin grot, and she took her, him, this knight, to the cave where she lives, elfin grot, that elfin, cave, supernatural being, elfin or some, anything like that, nymph or sylph or a fairy cave, and there she wept and sighed, fill sore, fill sore again, that youthful aggression, taking into consideration the possibility of slang being employed here, sighing in love with ecstasy, enjoying each moment in an intensive way, and wept also, perhaps would mean that not out of any grief she wept and sighed, moan, all mean the same thing. So producing some kind of sound as a testimony to the experience, a kind of blissful experience she is undergoing, and I shatter wild eyes now, that she too is lost in that pleasure, and both forgot themselves in that act of love. He kissed her 4 times with just the number, nothing significant. Significance, it seems to carry here the number. So he just kissed her, and they were lost in that union. There she lulled me to sleep. She lulled me asleep. I just slept after being exhausted of that act of love, and there I dreamed, and in my dream I saw something, oh, betide, something very agonizing, something very nightmarish. I just couldn't, dare to recollect what I saw, or I just, envisioned there. The latest dream I ever dreamt. And this puts a question to the reader. I mean, kind of a doubt in the minds of reader whether he's been to that place before, because he says it's his latest dream, which means last dream. He might have had such dreams before, or he might have been frequenting this place before. So he is perhaps damned, living in that kind of damnation, as if condemned in a soul. Latest dream I'd ever dreamt, on the cold hillside. Cold hillside. Cold is always associated with death, and so the very experience of love and the death are juxtaposed here, similar to the life that Keats lived in that short span of that in 26 years, uh, because these two things were in constant communion, or they were always with him, and he was never out of either of these two, love and in the poetry, and of course the death, in fact, because he was always conscious of his death. The death was approaching. He knew that he was dying, and there could be some moment in near future where it will put an end to all his aspirations of becoming a great poet, or holding on to his life, and to have a beautiful life with his beloved Fanny Brand, could be just an illusion, just a futile effort. It may not be a reality. So that perhaps is being described as the cold hillside. That very life that he was living in, perhaps is described in a metaphorical way. Cold hillside may stand for that. I saw pale kings. In his dreams, he saw he was not just the one. He was not just the one. He was not the only victim of her seduction. She is a seductress, has seduced many. I saw pale kings and princes too. In his dreams, he saw there were many people, many pale kings, who also have lost all the very vigor, essence of their lives in their body. So that is quite visible. Princess too. She hasn't spared anybody, neither the kings nor the princes, irrespective of their age and perhaps valor. Pale warriors. So the list included all. There were pale warriors also, which means no might could stand against her, a seduction or an attack, wild attack on. Because if you see or read a poem, Lamia, which was written as a sequel to this poem, this idea becomes very clear, because Lamia there is also a mythical figure in Greek mythology, a fairy who seduces young men, then she feeds on their flesh. So why is that the kind of obsession to portray a woman in that brutal form? In order to understand this, as I told you, his letters are the windows to his agonized soul. In one of his letters, in fact, comparing himself with Hamlet, Keats says, Shakespeare, and he was also an admirer of Shakespeare. He says Shakespeare has a sovereign way to assert his characters' emotions. So he quotes Hamlet when he says, "Go to nunnery, go," talking to his beloved Ophelia, not being able to perhaps live with her or fulfill her dream of becoming her lover. and that love always resulted in a kind of conflict or looked as an impediment to his vision or his purpose in life. So the same thing perhaps has happened here also. I mean, there after that line, after quoting Hamlet, he says, so Hamlet was also in similar misery as of mine. So I should also stop all this at once, and perhaps I should die. He says. So, and he continues, it is addressed to Fanny Bran, in fact, that letter. He continues to say, I am sickened at the very word, at the very brutal word that you are smiling with. So, this line perhaps, describes or gives us some clue what sort of intense conflict and agony that was there all his life, and he's been dealing with all his a short span of life, because he knew he couldn't afford to just denounce that love, and that has formed the very core of his life. At the same time, he loved the principle of beauty in everything, and he couldn't resist this aesthetic sense to produce or write poetry. He knew he was capable of it, he was good at it, but both couldn't go together. He calls her a monstrous in another letter, because after being fed up of her you cannot say disloyalty, but he suspected her of her loyalty always. That was the contradiction, that was the source of his agony. In fact, he says, you are a monstrous running in all directions, flying in all directions, he says, which means your interests are just scattered, and you do not owe any loyal to me, or perhaps that was the thing. So Keats, perhaps this attitude towards love and women is very much reflected here in reducing a woman to a monstrous or a brutality of love or women, the destructive power in women. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They looked as if they were just on the verge of death. They lost everything. There is nothing left significant about them. They cried. They all seemed to warn him, tell him, La belle Dame Sans Mercy had the enthrall. La belle Dame Sans Mercy has just trapped you as she did with us. She would put you in that imprisonment. She had kept you in this confinement, and be careful, beware, something like that, sort of sounding a warning. They all seem to cry at him in his dreams. These warriors, pale warriors, and princes and kings, of course. I saw their starved lips in glow. They all looked very desperate and very starved look, in a sense, seeking some kind of redemption out of this agony. No, some kind of help. At least they could come out of this trap. Starved lips in the gloom, with horrid warning gaped wide, as if they are giving a message, giving a warning to all the onlookers, and that this would be the disaster awaiting anybody who come in confrontation with this dame, a woman without mercy. And so he was just shaken out of that dream. I awoke and found me here. Then I awoke, realized it was a dream. I found me here. Here means on the cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here. And this is why, as you ask me the question, what is the ailment at what is that bothers me, or why I'm here loitering purpose, without any purpose. So this is why I stay here, or I loiter here alone and palely loitering. So this is why I just kept wandering alone here in this place, though the sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. Just the repetition of the first stanza. Uh, so this is the poem. Hope you have understood. Uh, do leave any your comments in the comment section, and try to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you will get notifications when a new video from my side is released. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.